Welcome to the True Crime Studio. Today, we bring you an extraordinary love story about breaking barriers, rebuilding trust, and rediscovering the courage to love. A millionaire, a caregiver, and a blind leap into the unknown. What unfolds is a journey of resilience and transformation. If you're ready for an unforgettable tale of love and second chances, hit that like button, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the True Crime Studio for more inspiring stories. Let's begin.
I need a caregiver, Ms. Chen, not a savior. James Barrett's voice cut through the mahogany-paneled study, his wheelchair positioned behind an antique desk that probably cost more than Sarah's annual salary. I've gone through 7 professionals in the past year. Why should you be any different? Sarah forced herself to maintain eye contact, though her fingernails dug into her palm beneath the desk. With respect, Mr. Barrett, I'm not interested in saving anyone. I'm a registered nurse with 8 years of experience in spinal cord injury care. I'm here because I'm good at my job, and you pay well. A slight raise of his eyebrow betrayed his surprise at her directness. The estate manager, Mrs. Henderson, shifted uncomfortably beside her. Your resume indicates you left Boston General 6 months ago, James continued, sliding the paper across his desk with one fluid motion. Why? The hospital's night shift didn't align with being a single mother. Sarah paused, weighing her next words. My daughter Emma is 8. She needs me present, not just awake. James's fingers drummed against his wheelchair's armrest, the only sign of movement below his chest. The position requires living on site 5 days a week. What about your daughter? Emma would stay with me during school breaks. Otherwise, she'd split time between here and my mother's house, which is closer to her school. Sarah leaned forward slightly. I've already discussed it with her. She understands. Does she? There was something unreadable in his expression. Children rarely understand sacrifice. Mine does. Sarah's voice remained steady, though she felt heat rising in her cheeks. But this isn't about sacrifice, Mr. Barrett. It's about opportunity. You need someone qualified who won't quit when things get difficult. I need a salary that will give my daughter better options than I had. It's a business arrangement, nothing more. Mrs. Henderson cleared her throat. The position requires extensive physical care, including bathing, physical therapy assistance, and I've reviewed the requirements, Sarah interrupted, keeping her eyes on James. I've handled more complex cases. What I haven't encountered is an employer who's gone through 7 caregivers in 12 months. So perhaps, Mr. Barrett, the real question is, what are you looking for that these professionals failed to provide? The silence that followed felt electric. James studied her with the intensity she imagined he once used to evaluate startup pitches. Finally, he wheeled himself around the desk until he was directly in front of her. What I need, Ms. Chen, is someone who will do their job without trying to fix my life. Someone who won't whisper about what a tragedy it is that a 38-year-old venture capitalist ended up in a wheelchair. Someone who won't treat me like I'm made of glass or suggest healing crystals and miracle cures. Sarah stood, matching his directness. What you need is a nurse who remembers you're her employer, not her patient. Someone who can handle the physical demands of the job while maintaining professional boundaries. I can be that person, Mr. Barrett. The question is, can you be the kind of employer who lets me do my job without assuming I have an agenda? For the first time, a ghost of a smile touched his lips. You start Monday. Mrs. Henderson will handle the paperwork. He turned his wheelchair back toward the window. A clear dismissal. Don't make me regret this, Ms. Chen. Sarah gathered her bag, her heart pounding despite her calm exterior. As she followed Mrs. Henderson out, she heard his voice one final time. And Ms. Chen? Tell your daughter the library here has an excellent collection of science books. She might find them useful when she visits. Sarah closed the door behind her, releasing a shaky breath. She had the job. Now she just had to convince herself she could handle whatever came next. But why can't you just drive home every night? Emma's voice wavered as she pushed her peas around her plate. The small kitchen in their Dorchester apartment felt even more cramped than usual, the flickering overhead light casting uneven shadows across their dinner table. Because Mr. Barrett needs 24-hour care, sweetie. Sarah reached across to still her daughter's restless hand. And this job pays enough for us to finally get you into that science camp you've been talking about. Emma's eyes lit up briefly before dimming again. The one with the robotics lab. That's the one. Sarah forced a smile, though the camp's $3,000 price tag still made her stomach clench, plus piano lessons if you still want them. The pile of bills on the counter seemed to mock her promise. Last month's medical insurance premium was already overdue, and the refrigerator made an ominous rattling sound that probably meant another repair bill soon. "Is he nice?" Emma asked, finally taking a bite of her dinner. Sarah thought back to James Barrett's penetrating gaze. "He's professional, and his house has a huge library. Better than the school library. Much better. And he said you can use it when you visit." Emma pushed her plate away, her face taking on the serious expression that made her look so much older than 8. "But I'll only see you on weekends. And school breaks," Sarah added quickly. "You'll stay with Grandma during the week. She already said you could have your own space in her craft room. The one with the weird doll collection." Sarah laughed despite herself. "We'll move those somewhere else." She stood to clear the dishes, but Emma grabbed her hand. "Mom, promise you won't forget about me when you're taking care of him." The words hit Sarah like a physical blow. She knelt beside her daughter's chair, forcing Emma to meet her eyes. "Listen to me. Everything I do, every single day, is for you. This job is no different. You are my priority, always. Even with a millionaire boss? Especially then." Sarah tucked a strand of hair behind Emma's ear. "Besides, someone needs to keep his ego in check. Did you see the size of that house? Definitely compensating for something." "Mom!" Emma giggled, the tension finally breaking. Later, after Emma was asleep, Sarah sat at their second-hand kitchen table counting bills. The acceptance letter from Barrett's estate manager lay beside her, the salary figure almost too good to be true. It would mean missing bedtimes, school plays, morning hugs. But it would also mean no more choosing between piano lessons and new shoes, between science camp and car repairs. Her phone buzzed with a text from Mrs. Henderson. "Contract attached. Start Monday, 7 a.m. sharp." Sarah signed the contract electronically, each click of her mouse feeling like another promise she couldn't afford to break. As she passed Emma's room on her way to bed, she paused in the doorway. Her daughter slept clutching the robotics magazine she'd been saving up to subscribe to. "Just a few years," Sarah whispered to herself, "just until we're stable." But as she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, she couldn't shake the memory of James Barrett's words. Children rarely understand sacrifice. She had a feeling she was about to learn exactly what he meant. "Arms up," Sarah directed, her professional tone masking her awareness of James's clenched jaw. It was their first morning together, and the tension in his master bathroom was thick enough to cut with a knife. "I can manage the shirt," he said tersely, though his fingers fumbled with the buttons. Sarah stepped back, giving him space while staying close enough to assist. "Of course, I'll prepare your shower items." The bathroom was a masterpiece of accessible design, with sleek grab bars that looked more like modern art than medical equipment. Everything spoke of money carefully spent to maintain the illusion of independence. "The water temperature," he began. 98 degrees, pressure at medium, handheld showerhead on the pulse setting," Sarah interrupted, reading from his care plan. "And yes, I know about the specialized shampoo for preventing scalp irritation." James's hands stilled on his shirt. "You actually read that 30-page document?" "Twice. It's my job." She turned to face him. "Now, would you prefer to transfer to the shower chair yourself, or would you like assistance?" A muscle twitched in his jaw. "Myself." Sarah watched as he positioned his wheelchair, locked the brakes, and began the transfer. His upper body strength was impressive. Clearly he hadn't neglected his physical therapy. But halfway through the transfer, his grip slipped. Without hesitation, Sarah stepped in, providing just enough support to prevent a fall. Their eyes met for a brief moment, and she saw something flicker there. Embarrassment, frustration, and beneath it all, fear. "Good catch," he said quietly. "Good technique," she replied, helping him settle into the shower chair. "Though your left grip seemed weaker. Have you been overcompensating with your right side?" He looked surprised at her observation. "How did you—" 8 years of experience, remember? Plus your left deltoid is slightly less developed." She adjusted the shower settings. "We should incorporate some targeted exercises into your PT routine." For the first time, James smiled slightly. "Are you always this observant?" "Only when I'm being paid to be." Sarah handed him the handheld shower head. "Now, would you like to start with the shampoo, or should I remind you of that part of your care plan too?" The rest of the morning routine went smoother. Sarah maintained her professional distance, while James gradually relaxed, accepting her help with less resistance. By the time she helped him into his suit for a video conference, they had established a tentative rhythm. "Your schedule shows a 2-hour meeting," Sarah said, adjusting his tie. "I'll use that time to familiarize myself with the house and emergency protocols." "Mrs. Henderson usually brings coffee at the 1-hour mark," James mentioned, positioning his wheelchair in front of his desk. I know. Page 17 of the care plan, but I make better coffee. Sarah moved toward the door. And I already noticed you prefer it stronger than what she brings. How did you? The coffee maker in your kitchen has a darker residue than it should for the standard brewing instructions. She paused at the doorway. I told you, Mr. Barrett. Being observant is my job. As she closed the door, Sarah heard him chuckle for the first time. It wasn't much, but it was a start. In the hallway, she leaned against the wall for a moment, releasing a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. First day, first major hurdle cleared. Only about 1,000 more to go. Her phone vibrated. A text from Emma. Hope your first day is good. Love you, Mum. Sarah smiled, typing back a quick response before straightening her uniform. Time to learn every inch of this mansion. After all, for the next 5 days, it was home. Piano Concerto number 23, James said suddenly, breaking the methodical silence of his evening bath routine. Sarah paused in adjusting the water temperature. Excuse me? The piece you're humming, Mozart's Piano Concerto number 23 in a major, second movement. His voice carried a hint of challenge, as if daring her to deny it. She hadn't even realized she was humming. The Adagio. You know it. I wanted to be a pianist before reality intervened. Sarah resumed her task, checking the water's temperature with practiced efficiency. Though I doubt Mozart intended it to be hummed during a sponge bath. A ghost of amusement crossed his face. And what did reality have to say about your musical aspirations? That single mothers don't get to spend 10 hours a day practicing Chopin. She helped him position his wheelchair next to the bath chair. Ready for the transfer. James gripped the support bars, muscles tensing. Did you play well? Well enough to know I'd never play well enough. Sarah supported his transfer with practiced ease. My teacher said I had technical skill but lacked passion. She was being kind. I doubt that. James settled into the bath chair, his business facade slipping slightly as the warm water eased his muscles. The way you hummed it, there was understanding there. Sarah focused on her task, maintaining professional distance despite the unexpected intimacy of their conversation. Understanding doesn't pay the bills, Mr. Barrett. Besides, Emma has more talent in her little finger than I ever had. The piano in the living room, he said after a moment. It hasn't been touched since the accident. You should use it. That wouldn't be appropriate. Why not? It's gathering dust, and you're here 5 days a week. His tone was casual, but his eyes were watching her carefully. Unless you're afraid your playing might disappoint a paraplegic venture capitalist. Sarah met his gaze directly. No, I'm afraid it might give my employer the wrong impression about our professional relationship. Ah, James was quiet as she finished washing his back. And what impression would that be? That I'm here for anything other than my paycheck. She handed him the soap for the parts he could manage himself. We both know how that story ends, Mr. Barrett. I've read your care plan, remember? 7 caregivers in 12 months. Each one probably thought they could be the one to break down your walls. His jaw tightened. And you don't? I'm here to do my job, not write a Hallmark movie. Sarah checked her watch. Your physical therapist will be here in 30 minutes. Would you like to finish up yourself, or do you need assistance? James studied her for a long moment. You know, Ms. Chen, most people find my walls intimidating. Most people aren't being paid to climb them. She handed him a towel. They're just walls, Mr. Barrett. I've seen better. As she helped him dress afterward, the silence between them felt different. Not comfortable exactly, but no longer brittle with unspoken tensions. Just as she finished buttoning his shirt, he spoke again. The piano. Use it when I'm in meetings. Consider it part of your break time. Sarah opened her mouth to refuse, but he continued. That's not a request for intimacy, Ms. Chen. It's a recognition that wasted talent is its own kind of tragedy. She thought of Emma, of piano lessons and science camps, and opportunities she'd never had. I'll consider it. Good. He wheeled himself toward the door. And Ms. Chen, next time you hum Mozart while bathing me, at least get the tempo right. Sarah waited until he was gone before allowing herself a small smile. Perhaps there was hope for both of them yet. Mrs. Henderson is sick, Sarah said into her phone, pacing the kitchen at 5:30 a.m. My mother's out of town visiting my aunt, and I can't find a last-minute sitter. Through the speaker, James's voice remained maddeningly calm. Bring her. Mr. Barrett, I don't think... Ms. Chen, your shift starts in 90 minutes. Either bring your daughter, or waste more time finding alternatives that don't exist. Sarah glanced at Emma, who sat at their kitchen table still in her pajamas, shoveling cereal into her mouth while reading a dog-eared copy of A Brief History of Time. She'll need to bring her schoolwork, Sarah said finally. The library has adequate study space. A pause. And Miss Chen? Don't be late. The call ended before she could respond. 2 hours later, Emma stood in James Barrett's study, staring openly at his wheelchair while he pretended not to notice. Sarah fought the urge to intervene, knowing any attempt to shush her daughter would only make things more awkward. "Is that a Permobil F5? Emma asked suddenly. James looked up from his laptop, surprise briefly crossing his features. "It is. How did you know?" "I did my science project on assistive technologies." Emma moved closer, her initial shyness forgotten. "Does it really have memory seating positions? Can you control it with your phone? What's the battery life like?" Sarah watched as James's professional mask cracked slightly. "Would you like me to show you?" "Can I?" Emma bounced on her toes. "Mum, can I?" "Your schoolwork first," Sarah said firmly. "Mr. Barrett has meetings." "Actually," James interjected, closing his laptop, "my first meeting isn't for an hour. Plenty of time for a demonstration." "That is, if it's all right with your mother." Sarah recognized the dangerous territory they were entering, but Emma's face was so hopeful, and James's expression held none of his usual guardedness. 30 minutes, she conceded, then homework. What followed was a surprisingly thorough technical explanation of the wheelchair's capabilities. James showed Emma the control panel, explained the different seating positions, and even demonstrated the standing function that allowed him to reach higher shelves. "The app interface lets me adjust settings remotely," he explained, holding out his phone. "See these preference menus?" Emma leaned in, fascinated. "So you could theoretically hack it?" "Emma!" Sarah exclaimed. But James laughed, actually laughed, for the first time since Sarah had known him. "Technically, yes, though it would void the warranty. Are you interested in programming?" "She's taking coding classes online," Sarah said, surprising herself by joining the conversation. "When she can pry my laptop away from me." "The library computer is free most afternoons," James said casually. "For homework purposes, of course." Emma's eyes lit up. "Really? Mum, can I—" "Homework first," Sarah and James said simultaneously, then looked at each other in surprise. Later, after Emma was settled in the library with her schoolwork, Sarah brought James his mid-morning coffee. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for being kind to her. She's a remarkable child." James took a sip of coffee, nodding appreciatively at the strength. "She sees the chair as technology to be understood, not a tragedy to be pitied. It's refreshing." Sarah straightened his desk items with practiced efficiency. "She sees a lot of things that way. Sometimes I worry she sees too much. Like mother, like daughter," James murmured, almost too quietly to hear. Sarah pretended she hadn't heard, maintaining their careful professional distance. But as she left his study, she couldn't help but wonder if the walls they'd both built were quite as impenetrable as they'd thought. Sarah found the darkroom by accident. She'd been checking the mansion's emergency exits, a weekly security protocol, when she noticed a door that wasn't on the house plans. The handle turned easily under her touch, revealing a space frozen in time. "You shouldn't be in here." James's voice from behind made her jump. "I apologize." Sarah turned to face him, noting how his knuckles had whitened on his wheelchair's armrests. "It wasn't on the floor plan, and security protocols require—" "It's not part of your responsibility." His voice was tight, controlled. "Please close the door." But Sarah had already seen too much. The professional cameras still mounted at wheelchair height, the specialized equipment adapted for limited mobility use, the half-finished projects abandoned mid-process. "These are extraordinary," she said, gesturing to the photographs that lined the walls. Black and white cityscapes, architectural studies, portraits that captured raw human emotion. "They're irrelevant." James moved forward, positioning his chair to block the doorway. "The room needs to be cleared out. I've been meaning to tell Mrs. Henderson." "Why?" The question hung between them, dangerous in its simplicity. "Because I can't use the equipment anymore." His voice was cold. "Or had you failed to notice my condition?" Sarah crossed her arms. "I noticed the modified tripod mounts, the adjusted camera grips, the remote shutter releases. Someone put a lot of thought into making this room accessible. Someone wasted their time. Did they?" Sarah moved to one of the mounted cameras, examining it. "These modifications look custom, expensive. You didn't give up easily, did you?" James's laugh was bitter. "What exactly do you think you're doing, Ms. Chen?" "My job." She met his gaze steadily. "Which includes understanding why my employer went through 7 caregivers in 12 months. This room tells me more than your care plan ever could." "Does it?" His voice was dangerous now. Please enlighten me. It tells me you're not just grieving the loss of mobility. Sarah gestured to the photographs. You're grieving the loss of your art. And instead of adapting, you've locked it away, like this room, like yourself. The silence that followed was deafening. Get out. His words were quiet but sharp. The camera settings are still functional, she continued as if he hadn't spoken. The autofocus works perfectly. The remote controls. Get out. No. Sarah stood her ground. You can fire me if you want, but first, tell me why you really abandoned this room. James wheeled forward suddenly, his chair stopping inches from her. Because every time I try to shoot, my hands shake, because I can't move quickly enough to catch the right moment. Because the angles I used to achieve are physically impossible now, because... He stopped, breathing hard. Because it's harder, Sarah finished softly. Not impossible. Just harder. The fight seemed to drain out of him. Why do you care? I don't. Not personally. Sarah moved past him to the door. But I'm paid to help you maintain your quality of life, Mr. Barrett. And this room? She gestured to the space around them. This was clearly part of that life. She paused at the threshold. I'll leave the door unlocked, in case you need to check the emergency exits yourself. As she walked away, she heard him whisper something that sounded like, thank you. But she was already too far down the hall to be sure, and some things were better left unacknowledged. Mom, I'm going to fail. Emma's voice crackled through Sarah's phone. The circuit board won't work, and the science fair is tomorrow, and... Breathe, sweetie. Sarah glanced at the clock. 9:45 p.m. She was supposed to be finishing James's evening routine, not dealing with a science project crisis. What exactly isn't working? The LED lights keep burning out, and I don't know why, and Grandma doesn't understand electronics and... Your daughter sounds distressed, James commented from his bed, where Sarah had been helping him with his night stretches. Sarah covered the phone's microphone. I'm sorry, Mr. Barrett. I can call her back after... Put her on video chat. On the big screen. He gestured to the wall-mounted television. Sarah hesitated. That's not necessary. Ms. Chen. His voice was firm. Put her on screen. Minutes later, Emma's tearful face filled the television, her failed circuit board project visible in front of her. You've got the resistor backwards, James said immediately. Emma's eyes widened. Mr. Barrett, show me the circuit again. He leaned forward in his bed, professional demeanor forgotten. Yes, there. The striped band should face the other direction. For the next 30 minutes, Sarah watched as James guided Emma through troubleshooting her project. He explained current flow, demonstrated proper LED orientation using a diagram he had Sarah pull up on his tablet, and walked Emma through each connection. Now try it, he instructed. Emma flipped the switch. The LED lights blinked in perfect sequence. I did it. She bounced in her chair. Mom, look. Mr. Barrett, it worked. Of course it worked. You built it. James's voice carried an unfamiliar warmth. Though next time maybe start the troubleshooting before 10 p.m.? Emma had the grace to look sheepish. Sorry, but could there be a next time? Maybe when I'm there for my visit? You know so much about electronics and... Emma, Sarah warned, seeing the flash of discomfort cross James's face. But he surprised her. The library computer has some excellent circuit simulation software. We could look at it, if your mother approves. Sarah felt caught between professional boundaries and maternal instinct. We shouldn't impose... It's not an imposition. James met her eyes. Consider it payment for all the Mozart you've been butchering during my bath times. Emma giggled. Mom, you've been singing to him. Humming, Sarah corrected, feeling heat rise in her cheeks, and apparently doing it badly. Terribly, James agreed, but his eyes were smiling. And now, Emma, tell me more about your project. What made you choose this particular circuit design? As Emma launched into an enthusiastic explanation, Sarah watched James's face. The rigid mask he usually wore had softened, replaced by genuine interest and something else, something that looked dangerously like contentment. Later, after Emma had signed off and Sarah was helping James settle for the night, he spoke quietly. She reminds me of myself at that age, before I got caught up in venture capital and quarterly reports. Sarah adjusted his pillows. You mean before you started building walls? Careful, Ms. Chen. But there was no bite in his warning. Your professionalism is slipping. So is yours. She moved to turn off the lights. Thank you for helping her. Sarah, he rarely used her first name, leave the circuit software tutorial up on the library computer tomorrow, just in case. She smiled in the darkness. Good night, Mr. Barrett. Good night, Ms. Chen. Try not to hum in your sleep. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across James's home office as Sarah entered with his afternoon medication. She paused in the doorway, surprised to find him engaged in what appeared to be an animated video call. "Your revenue projections are solid," he was saying, "but your accessibility features need work. The interface isn't compatible with most screen readers, and the navigation assumes users have fine motor control." Sarah placed his pills and water quietly beside him, trying not to disturb the meeting. But she couldn't help noticing the screen filled with young faces, all hanging on James's every word. "But we didn't design it for disabled users," one of them protested. "Then you've excluded 15% of your potential market." James's voice carried the sharp edge she recognized from their early interactions. "Pull up your UI mock-ups. Let me show you something." For the next 20 minutes, Sarah pretended to organize his desk, while watching him methodically deconstruct and rebuild their design. His expertise was evident, but it was his passion that caught her attention. This was the most animated she'd seen him since discovering the photography room. After the call ended, she couldn't help herself. That was different. Different? He raised an eyebrow, swallowing his pills. "Usually you spend meetings looking like you're enduring root canal." Sarah gathered the empty water glass. "These were student entrepreneurs, a startup incubator for undergrad tech projects." He wheeled himself to the window. "Mrs. Henderson must have accidentally scheduled it. Mrs. Henderson has been out sick for 3 days. "Ah," he turned to face her. "Then I suppose I have you to thank for cluttering my calendar with student meetings." Sarah met his gaze steadily. "You turned down 3 venture capital meetings this morning to take this call. Should I cancel the other student sessions I scheduled?" The corner of his mouth twitched. "How many did you schedule?" 2 per week for the next month." She moved toward the door, all focusing on assistive technology projects. "But I can clear them. Leave them." His voice stopped her. "But Ms. Chen." "Yes?" "The next time you manipulate my schedule, you might want to be less obvious about it." Sarah allowed herself a small smile. "The next time you pretend to be annoyed about it, you might want to be less obvious about hiding your enthusiasm." She closed the door on his surprised laugh, feeling oddly satisfied. In the hallway, she pulled out her phone to text Emma. "How's the circuit board holding up?" The response came quickly. "Great. Is Mr. Barrett there? I had some questions about parallel circuits." Sarah stared at the message, realizing with sudden clarity that she wasn't the only one whose professional boundaries were beginning to blur. The question was, what was she going to do about it? From the office, she could hear James on another call, his voice carrying the same passionate intensity as before. Maybe, she thought, some boundaries were meant to be redrawn rather than reinforced. She texted back, "He's in meetings until 5. But I'm sure he can find time to answer questions during your next visit." After all, she reasoned, mentoring was just another form of caregiving, and that, at least, was still within her job description. No. James's refusal echoed through his bedroom as Sarah laid out his evening clothes. "The invitation specifically requested your presence," she countered, smoothing an invisible wrinkle from his charcoal suit jacket. "Your work is being featured." "My former work." He kept his wheelchair facing the window. "They're displaying pieces from before the accident. It's nothing but misplaced nostalgia." Sarah continued her preparations, unfazed. The gallery director mentioned new photographers exploring adaptive techniques. "She thought you might have insights to share. Is there anything in this house you haven't orchestrated?" His tone carried more weariness than anger. "First the student mentoring, now this. I merely answered the phone when she called." Sarah placed his shoes near the bed, though I did suggest that discussing adaptive photography techniques might be more valuable than simply displaying your old work. James finally turned to face her. "You're not going to let this go, are you?" "No." She met his gaze. "Because you haven't been sleeping. Because you spend hours staring at that locked darkroom door. Because you think you know what's best for me?" His voice hardened. "Because I'm tired of watching you hide." The words escaped before she could stop them, hanging in the air between them. The silence stretched, dangerous and electric. "You'll need to accompany me," he finally said, "for medical support." "Of course." She kept her voice neutral, professional. "I'll wear something appropriate." 2 hours later, they arrived at the gallery. Sarah had chosen a simple black dress that walked the line between caregiver and companion, while James looked every inch, the successful venture capitalist in his tailored suit. The gallery director rushed to greet them, her enthusiasm almost masking her surprise at James's appearance. "Mr. Barrett, we have your works in the main hall, and there's someone I'd like you to meet." She introduced them to a young photographer who used mouth-controlled camera equipment. As the artist explained his techniques, Sarah watched James's face. The familiar mask of indifference cracked slightly, replaced by genuine interest. "Have you tried remote triggering systems?" he asked, leaning forward in his chair. "I found that certain wireless setups allow for more complex timing." He caught himself glancing at Sarah. She pretended to be absorbed in examining a nearby photograph. The evening progressed, and Sarah maintained a careful distance, close enough to assist but far enough to give him space. She watched as James gradually engaged with more artists, each conversation becoming more animated than the last. "Your perspective on adaptive techniques would be invaluable," one photographer insisted. "Would you consider consulting on our accessibility project?" Before James could refuse, Sarah stepped in. "I'm sure, Mr. Barrett's schedule has some availability next month. Shall I have his office contact you?" James shot her a look that mixed exasperation with something else, something that might have been gratitude. Later, as they waited for their car, he spoke quietly. "You're overstepping, Ms. Chen." "Yes," she agreed. "Would you like me to stop?" He was silent for a long moment, watching the city lights reflect off his chair's chrome finish. "The consulting project. Make it twice a month, not weekly." "Of course." She helped him into the car. "And the darkroom?" "One step at a time, Ms. Chen." But his voice had lost its edge. "One step at a time. You need to fire her." Catherine Barrett's voice carried through the study door as Sarah approached with James's morning medication. She froze, hand hovering over the doorknob. "That's not your decision, Kate." James's tone was clipped. "When your caregiver starts manipulating your schedule and dragging you to public events, it becomes a family concern." A pause. "She's overstepping, Jimmy. First the photography consultation, then those student meetings. Now I hear she's letting her daughter treat this place like an after-school program." Sarah's fingers tightened around the pill container. "Emma's visits are authorized." James sounded tired. "And the consulting work was my decision." "Was it? Like the darkroom was your decision?" "She's trying to fix you, Jimmy. They all do. Then they get frustrated and quit, and you're left dealing with the aftermath. Ms. Chen is different. Because she's pretty? Because she has a conveniently tragic single mother story? That's enough." James's voice cracked like a whip. "You don't know her." "And you do?" Catherine's heels clicked across the hardwood floor. "I've seen how you look at her, how she looks at you. It's inappropriate. She looks at me like a person, Kate, not a broken investment that needs managing." Sarah backed away from the door, but Catherine's next words followed her. "She looks at you like she's falling in love with you, and worse, you're letting her." Sarah retreated to the kitchen, her hands shaking as she set down the medication. She stared at the pills, organized with professional precision: pain management, muscle relaxants, antispasmodics. A medical routine she could recite in her sleep. When had it become more than that? "Ms. Chen." She turned to find Catherine in the doorway, elegant in her designer suit. "Mrs. Barrett." "Catherine, please." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "I believe we need to talk." "About my resignation?" Sarah kept her voice steady. "About my brother." Catherine moved closer. "He's not just another patient, Ms. Chen. He's brilliant, stubborn, and incredibly vulnerable, though he'd hate me for saying that. I know who he is." "Do you?" Catherine studied her. "Because from where I stand, you're either manipulating him very skillfully or you're in danger of crossing a line that will destroy you both." Catherine's voice softened slightly. "He can't afford to lose another caregiver, Sarah. And from what I've seen of you with your daughter, you can't afford to lose this job." Sarah met her gaze. "What exactly are you asking me to do?" "Step back. Be professional. Stop trying to fix what can't be fixed." Catherine moved toward the door. "Before someone gets hurt." After she left, Sarah mechanically prepared James's coffee, adding the precise amount of cream he preferred. Her fingers brushed the piano keys as she passed the living room, and she quickly pulled them away. When she finally entered his study, James was staring out the window. "You heard." It wasn't a question. "Yes." She set down his coffee and medication. "And?" Sarah straightened her uniform. "Your sister has valid concerns about professional boundaries." "Sarah, your first meeting is in 20 minutes, Mr. Barrett." She stepped back, rebuilding her walls brick by brick. "Would you like me to review the agenda with you?" The silence that followed felt like a door closing. "No," he finally said, his own walls sliding back into place. "That will be all, Ms. Chen." She nodded and left, each step feeling heavier than the last. In her pocket, her phone buzzed with a text from Emma. "Can we visit the library again soon?" Sarah closed her eyes briefly before typing, "Not this week, sweetie." Mr. Barrett is very busy. Some lines, once drawn, couldn't be uncrossed. She just hoped they both remembered how to live behind their walls. Your morning routine needs adjustment, Sarah announced 3 days after Catherine's visit, reading from her tablet while standing at a carefully measured distance from James's desk. The hospital's occupational therapy department suggests increasing your stretching time by 15 minutes. Fine. James didn't look up from his laptop. Also, they recommend... Whatever they recommend is fine, Ms. Chen. The formal distance between them had become its own kind of pain. Every interaction now felt scripted, sanitized, stripped of the warmth that had slowly built over the months. Sarah pressed on. Dr. Martinez called about your quarterly evaluation. Schedule it whenever. It conflicts with the student mentoring sessions. His fingers stilled on the keyboard. Cancel those. The students are counting on... Cancel them. He finally looked at her, his face unreadable. That's what you want, isn't it? Professional boundaries. Sarah kept her voice steady. What I want is irrelevant. I'm here to facilitate your care plan. My care plan. He laughed bitterly. Tell me, Ms. Chen, does your care plan include making me forget how to be human again? Mr. Barrett, 3 days. He wheeled around his desk to face her. 3 days of perfect professional distance. No commentary on my coffee preferences. No Mozart during bath time. No meaningful conversations. Just efficient clinical care. That's my job, is it? He moved closer. Then why did you ever let me help Emma with her science project? Why did you unlock that darkroom? Why did you fill my calendar with student meetings that made me feel useful again? Sarah gripped her tablet tighter. Those were mistakes. Overstepping. They were kind. His voice softened. You were kind, Sarah. Not because you pitied me, but because you saw me. The real me. Not just the chair or the diagnosis. Your sister isn't my caregiver. He reached for her hand, but she stepped back. No, I am. And I've been warned by the hospital about maintaining appropriate boundaries with private clients. Sarah straightened her shoulders. I can't lose my nursing license, Mr. Barrett. Emma depends on me, and I don't. The question hung between them, heavy with unspoken meanings. You depend on my professional services, she said carefully. Services that 7 others provided before me. None of them were you. Sarah closed her eyes briefly. That's exactly the problem. She turned to leave, but his voice stopped her. If I asked you to quit, to just be... Don't. She cut him off. Don't make me choose between my daughter's security and... whatever this is. It could be everything. It could be a lawsuit. She forced herself to meet his gaze. Or a scandal. Or just another failed experiment in making you feel whole again. The hurt that flashed across his face made her want to take back the words immediately. Is that what you think this is? He asked quietly. An experiment? I think... Sarah took a deep breath. I think it's time for your physical therapy session. Shall I call for the wheelchair van? James stared at her for a long moment before turning away. Yes, Miss Chen. That will be all. She made it to the hallway before her hands started shaking. Her phone buzzed. A text from the hospital's HR department. Reminder, quarterly review of private client boundaries next week. Sarah leaned against the wall, letting out a shaky breath. Professional boundaries were supposed to protect everyone involved, so why did maintaining them feel like the cruelest thing she'd ever done? His temperature is 103.2, Sarah reported into her phone, pressing a cool cloth to James's forehead. Yes, I understand the risks with his condition. No, he's not fully responsive. I need an ambulance now. The pneumonia had come on suddenly. A slight cough in the morning had become labored breathing by evening. Now, at 2 a.m., James lay in his bed, skin burning beneath her touch as she monitored his vitals. Stay with me, she murmured, forgetting professional distance in her concern. The ambulance is coming. Just stay with me. His eyes flickered open, unfocused. Sarah, I'm here. She checked his pulse again. Too fast, too weak. Cold, he mumbled. That's the fever. She adjusted his blanket, years of nursing experience warring with personal fear. Just keep breathing. Nice and slow. His hand found hers, grip weak, but desperate. Don't leave. I won't. She squeezed back, protocols forgotten. I'm right here. The paramedics arrived minutes later, efficiently transferring him to a gurney. Sarah rattled off his medical history, medications, and vital signs, her professional mask firmly in place, despite her racing heart. Family? One paramedic asked. I'll call his sister. Sarah grabbed her phone. I'm his caregiver. I'll follow in my car. The next 12 hours passed in a blur of hospital corridors and medical updates. Sarah coordinated with doctors, managed Catherine's frantic arrival, and kept Emma updated via text. She didn't allow herself to think about anything except James's next breath, his next test result, his next dose of antibiotics. "You should go home," Catherine said around hour 14, finding Sarah standing guard outside James's ICU room. "You look exhausted." "I'm fine." Sarah checked her watch. "His next breathing treatment is in 20 minutes. Catherine studied her for a long moment. "This isn't in your job description." "Everything about his care is in my job description." "Is that what you're doing, your job?" Sarah watched through the window as James slept, oxygen mask fogging with each breath. "Yes." "Liar." Catherine's voice was surprisingly gentle. "You're in love with him. I'm his caregiver. You can be both." Catherine touched her arm. "God knows I've fought it, but maybe that's what he needs." Sarah finally turned to face her. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I was wrong." Catherine smiled sadly. "And you're still lying to yourself." Before Sarah could respond, alarms blared from James's room. His oxygen levels were dropping. Sarah moved without thinking, rushing to his side as nurses flooded the room. Her hand found his as the medical team worked, and his fingers tightened weakly around hers. "I'm here," she whispered, professional boundaries crumbling like sand. "I'm right here." Hours later, when his fever finally broke and he opened his eyes, she was still there, still holding his hand. "Sarah?" His voice was hoarse. "Shh." She smoothed his hair back. "Just rest. Don't go." She thought about protocols and boundaries, about Emma and job security, about all the walls they'd built and broken. "I won't," she promised. And this time she meant more than just the night. Catherine, watching from the doorway, quietly stepped away, pulling out her phone to call the family lawyer. Some boundaries, she realized, were meant to be rewritten. "I hereby tender my resignation," Sarah said formally, placing the envelope on James's hospital tray. 2 weeks had passed since his admission, and though he was recovering well, the tension between them remained palpable. James stared at the envelope without touching it. When, effective immediately, Sarah smoothed her uniform, a gesture that had become more nervous habit than necessity. "I've arranged for a temporary replacement through the agency. She's fully qualified and—" "Stop." He pushed the envelope away. "Why?" "Because I can't be your caregiver anymore." She met his eyes steadily. "Not after everything." The hospital room felt too small suddenly, charged with unspoken words and abandoned pretenses. "And what is everything exactly?" His voice was quiet but intense. "You know what?" Sarah moved to check his IV, a reflexive action she no longer had the right to perform. She forced her hands back to her sides. "I held your hand. You've held my hand before. During transfers, during therapy. Not like that." She turned to face the window. "Not because I was afraid of losing you." The silence stretched between them, filled only by the steady beep of his heart monitor. "So you're running?" It wasn't a question. "I'm protecting us both." She turned back to him. "I can't be objective anymore. I can't maintain professional distance. I can't..." "Can't what, Sarah?" "Care. Can't pretend." The words burst out of her. "I can't pretend I'm just doing my job when I spend every moment wondering if you're really comfortable, if you're truly happy, if there's more I could do to make you smile. I can't pretend I don't notice how your eyes light up when you mentor those students, or how peaceful you look when you're explaining circuits to Emma, or how I'm in love with you." The words stopped her cold. "You can't say that," she whispered. "Why not? Because it's unprofessional." He wheeled himself closer to her. "I'm not your patient anymore, Sarah. You just resigned, remember? It's not that simple." "Actually, it is." He reached for her hand, and this time she didn't pull away. "I love you. Not because you took care of me, but because you saw me, really saw me. Not as a charge or a burden or a broken thing to be fixed. Just me." Sarah felt tears threatening. "James, I've already spoken with the hospital's ethics board," he continued, "and my lawyers. There's no conflict if you're not my employee. No ethical boundaries being crossed. Just two people who found each other in an unexpected way. And Emma, what about her? She already thinks I'm her personal science tutor." His smile was gentle. "Unless you're worried she'll be disappointed that her circuit-building sessions might become more frequent." Sarah laughed despite herself, tears finally spilling over. "You've thought of everything, haven't you? I'm a venture capitalist. Risk assessment is what I do." He tugged her closer. "And you, Sarah Chen, are worth every risk." She looked at their joined hands. No longer caregiver and patient, just a man and a woman on the edge of something new. "I still don't know if this will work," she admitted. "Neither do I." He squeezed her hand. but I'd rather try and fail than spend the rest of my life wondering what might have been. Wouldn't you? Sarah thought of all the walls they'd built and broken, all the boundaries they'd drawn and crossed. Maybe it was time to draw new ones together. Yes, she whispered, and leaned down to kiss him. Are you sure about this? Emma stood in the doorway of James's darkroom, watching him adjust camera settings with practiced movements. 1 month after his hospital release, the room had transformed from a shrine to his past into a working studio. About teaching you photography, James glanced up from the camera, or about dating your mother. Emma considered this, her face serious. Both, I guess. Ah, he wheeled himself back from the workbench. Come here, let me show you something. Sarah watched from the doorway as James guided Emma's hands to the camera, showing her how to hold it steady. She'd planned to give them privacy for this moment, but something in their interaction held her transfixed. See this adapter? James demonstrated the modified trigger mechanism. I designed it after the accident, but I was too afraid to use it. Fear's funny that way. It makes you forget what you're capable of. Emma adjusted her grip on the camera. Is that why you stopped taking pictures? Partly. James helped her frame a shot. Mostly I was afraid of doing things differently than before. I thought different meant worse. But it doesn't. Emma lowered the camera to look at him. No. His eyes met Sarah's in the doorway. Sometimes different just means finding a new way to see things. A better way, even. Sarah felt her heart tighten as Emma processed this, her daughter's analytical mind working through the layers of meaning. Is that why you love my mum? Emma asked suddenly. Because she helped you see things differently? James's hands stilled on the camera. I love your mum because she's brave enough to try new things, even when they're scary. Like letting her daughter spend time with her former patient. Ex-patient, Sarah corrected, finally entering the room. Current boyfriend. Still weird, Emma declared, but she was smiling. But kind of cool too, especially if I get to learn photography. Speaking of which, James reached for a second camera, this one slightly smaller. This one's yours for practice. Emma's eyes widened. Really? Really? He started explaining the basic settings, but Emma threw her arms around him first, surprising them all. Thank you, she whispered, then pulled back embarrassed. Sorry, I know you're not big on hugs. I'm learning to be, James said softly, adjusting his chair. Different, remember? Sarah watched them return to the camera lesson, noting how naturally they moved around each other now. Trust, she realized, was like photography. It required patience, practice, and the courage to see things in a new light. Mum, Emma called excitedly, come look at this shot. Sarah moved to join them, her hand finding James's shoulder as she leaned in to see the photo. His fingers covered hers briefly, a gesture so natural now it barely registered. Beautiful, she said, meaning more than just the photograph. Later, as they watched Emma practicing with her new camera in the garden, James spoke quietly. She's not the only one I'm sure about, you know. Sarah squeezed his hand. I know. Some pictures, she thought, took time to develop, but when they finally came clear, they were worth every moment of waiting. Is everything ready? Sarah adjusted the last photograph on the darkroom wall, now transformed into a makeshift gallery. 6 months had passed since her resignation, each day bringing new definitions of normal. Almost. James positioned his wheelchair near the doorway, surveying their work. Emma's bringing the final prints up from the development room. The exhibition was small, family and close friends only, but it represented something larger. Each photograph told part of their story. Emma learning to use her camera, Sarah rediscovering the piano, James mentoring his students. Moments captured not despite their challenges, but because of them. The ethics board wants to interview us, Sarah mentioned, straightening a frame. Apparently, we're becoming a case study in professional boundary transitions. James laughed. Should I mention how you used to butcher Mozart during bath time? Only if you want to sleep in the guest room. She leaned down to kiss him, still marveling at how natural it felt. Mom! Emma's voice carried up the stairs. Aunt Catherine's here. They shared a look. Catherine's evolution from skeptic to supporter hadn't been easy, but like everything else in their lives, they'd found a way to make it work. Ready? James asked, taking her hand. Sarah squeezed his fingers. For our first public appearance as a real couple? Terrifying. Good thing you're brave. He tugged her down for another kiss. Remember what you told me that first day? About walls? That you had good ones? She smiled against his lips. That I'd seen better? That they were just walls? He pulled back to meet her eyes. You were right. They were just walls, and you didn't break them down. You showed me how to build doors instead. Footsteps on the stairs announced their guest's arrival. Emma led the way, proudly wearing her new camera. Catherine followed, along with James's medical team, a few close friends, and even Mrs. Henderson. "Welcome," James addressed the small crowd, his voice steady. "To our first family exhibition." Sarah watched as their guests moved through the room, examining photographs that chronicled their journey. Emma's first successful portrait, James teaching a student to use adapted equipment, Sarah at the piano, caught in a moment of pure joy. "They're all wondering how we made it work," James murmured, pulling her close. Sarah watched Emma enthusiastically explaining her photography techniques to Catherine, who listened with genuine interest. "We're still figuring that out. Day by day, photograph by photograph," she smiled. Speaking of which, she nodded to Emma, who grinned and raised her camera. James pulled Sarah onto his lap, both of them laughing as their daughter captured the moment. Later, after the guests had gone and Emma was asleep, they returned to the darkroom. James wheeled to the final photograph, the one they'd taken that first day he'd reopened the room. "It's blurry," he noted critically. "It's perfect." Sarah wrapped her arms around him from behind. "It shows exactly where we started, and where we're going." She turned him to face her. "That's still developing," he smiled, pulling her close. "I love you, Ms. Chen. I love you too, Mr. Barrett." She kissed him softly. "Now, about that Mozart." Their laughter echoed through the house, their house now, a melody sweeter than any concerto. Some things they'd learned didn't need to be captured in photographs. They just needed to be lived, one moment at a time, with hearts brave enough to choose love over fear, growth over safety, and the messy, beautiful reality of building something new together. In the end, it wasn't about breaking boundaries or maintaining them. It was about redrawing them together until they formed not walls but foundations for something stronger than either of them had imagined possible.
Thank you for watching this heartwarming story here on the True Crime Studio. This tale shows us that love, resilience, and kindness have the power to transform lives in the most unexpected ways. Remember to cherish the connections in your life and always keep an open heart. If this story inspired you, please like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the True Crime Studio for more incredible stories. Wishing you all the best and see you in the next video.